Good afternoon, everyone. Today's topic, diabetes is curable, learn how now, has tremendous implications for over 100 million people have at least some of what has been called metabolic syndrome or some of the problem of insulin dysregulation. And we are indebted to a Dr. Mark Hyman, who has actually organized a diabesity prescription, which we will be discussing in some depth today, to make it clear to you that the tools exist in a format that you will be able to master. And we do know that this subject has such tremendous interest that we will be extending it into next week. And for those who are concerned that it may not be beneficial with type 1 diabetes, of course, is autoimmune, and that's one of my favorite topics. And so there is a difference in type 1 and type 2, but there's information here that should be beneficial to everyone. So if we start, we have to realize that this epidemic of diabetes has gone from 5 million to 14 million just a few 6 years ago, and now we're talking about 23.5 million today, and it is predicted that we'll have 45 million in a few short years with diagnosed diabetes, but the metabolic syndrome and this obesity epidemic is everywhere. And we have answers, and we'll try to make these answers understandable to you today. But when we look at an issue that is overlooked by 99% of diabetologists, they say they do nothing to try to lower your load of toxins. They don't do anything about your heavy metals. And they give lip service to the inflammation without really looking behind the scenes to see what are the contributors, which in some cases are just the huge intake of sugar and foods like high fructose corn syrup and foods that were not designed, unfortunately, to handle, which for 40% of people is dairy, and for 30% of people are gluten-related foods like wheat. So as we go into this presentation today, let's look at the toxin load. We recognize that there's a very good group that are very credible called EWG.org. Environmental Working Group has made it their job to organize the information because your doctors are ignoring it. And as this little blurb on this slide shows, on the bottom line it says the second study by U.S. Center for Disease Control measured 116 pollutants in the blood of 10,000 Americans. So it's not just that we have some people who have agreed to let us test their blood and have found that they're loaded with these toxins. There are nobody tested who passes the test. And so whether it's Bill Moyer on PBS or Jim Lerner, whether you live an organic life and you're careful about what you breathe, obviously it's good to live a careful life, but we still will find these chemicals that we're talking about, and they are dangerous, and they have now been linked to the problem of diabetes. So when you see huge quantities of hazardous waste with dioxins that are generated in PVC production, these are added to so many products that we use and consume that this frightening picture called 10 Americans, if you simply see in the upper corner, this is a video, or you go to Google and you put in the word 10, spell it out, T-E-N, Americans, and it'll show video. And you click on it and you will see the powerful story where they test for 413 toxic chemicals and 287 are found, including many that we thought we banned years ago. So there is no escaping. Now, who are these 10 Americans that they made all this fuss about to make a video that anyone can get? on Google by putting in the word 10 Americans. Up will come video. You click on it and you listen to what you're going to hear. Because these were not farm workers. They were not industrially exposed people. They weren't even homemakers. These were babies. These were babies at the moment of birth. And all they did is take that umbilical cord and collect the umbilical cord blood at random from 10 children in the United States and sent it to a laboratory. One laboratory is at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. And that laboratory is under the Director of Preventive Medicine, Dr. Landigan. And they will charge you $4,900, and it requires 20 tubes of blood if you want to learn the facts about your body. But those of us who've read everything that EWG puts out know that in a sense, it's almost a waste of your money to measure your chlordane and dialdehyde and DDT and hexachlorobenzene. These are persistent organic pollutants. And when you learn to go to Google and you put in the word persistent organic pollutants, then you say plus, and you put in the word diabetes, and you will find that here is a major piece of a puzzle. And remember, what we're talking about here is the broader problem of glucose intolerance and elevated fasting levels of insulin, which when they get to a certain point are called diabetes. Prior to that, they could be lumped into a condition called metabolic syndrome. And as you will see here, we want to tie in your mind testicular cancer and endometriosis and breast cancer. And I want to tie it in your mind for many, many reasons here. Because it is not easy to eliminate these toxins because you are born with them. And they concentrate over a lifetime in fatty tissues. And we always get a fresh stock of these pollutants every day when you breathe, eat, or bathe, or drink water. But what we want to mention here is it mentions on this line, it says things like breast cancer. Well, I want to make you aware that breast cancer, the data is very strong, that if we give you the adequate ideal dose of vitamin D, we could reduce all cases of breast cancer, we are confident, from top scientific analysis by 68%. Now, that doesn't mean that vitamin D is going to eliminate your diabetes. It is part of a big program that Dr. Mark Hyman has very, very well organized in his action plan, 6 weeks, step-by-step, with everything you need to know. And it's called the Diabesity Prescription, and you will go to the ultrawellness.com website or put in his name, which I will show you how to do, and you will be able to get all of his well laid out program. There's this strong relationship then between the persistent organic pollutants that no one can escape, and I don't want everybody spending $4,900. The price will come down. There will be new methods of testing, maybe not 200, but at least 100 or so, for maybe $300, $400, $500. That test is going to become available, and I predict it will help change the face of medical practice. Remember, I was the director of a laboratory called Mineral Lab. We had offices in Tokyo, Amsterdam, Boston, and San Francisco, and we did 100,000 people's blood, urine, and hair for trace elements: lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic. I have saved many, many lives. I have uncovered the diagnosis when until then the doctor was treating them for depression or chronic fatigue. No one tends to really pay attention in American medicine today to causes. We slap a label on you and we give you a drug that has been approved for that particular condition. When you understand that Big Pharma is under attack from very intelligent people Even Dr. Marcella Angel, former editor of New England Journal of Medicine, has written a book about how nonsense gets printed in New England Journal of Medicine, where it's absolutely money talking and has little to do with getting you well. But doctors are busy, and we're going to see you for a few minutes and slap a label on you. But what we're trying to do in this slide, 232 toxic chemicals in 10 babies, we're mentioning here BPA, bisphenol A. It has been implicated in cancer and cognitive and behavioral impairments, endocrine system disruption, reproductive, cardiovascular system, diabetes, asthma. So the EPA a few months ago said, oh no, we've looked at BPA, it's safe. Leading scientists jumped down the throat of FDA, and they've had to eat their words, and they're subjecting it to another committee hearing. Because after all, Randy Girdle, PhD, Duke University, has been famous for his research on agouti mice, where with the exposure of BPA, all the offspring of the exposed mice for all time are diabetic and obese. Let me repeat. Everybody listening to me right now has BPA in you right now. We know what it does to you. It causes an epigenetic change. That's above genetics. You see, it confuses people. We today have an epidemic of autism. Now, if you have an epidemic, so that 1 out of 100 young boys born today will have autism, it would seem to most people that it couldn't be genetic because it's happened virtually overnight. But there's this powerful word that you're going to have to learn more. Epi means above. Above genetics means that the change occurred virtually instantaneously, and we altered your ability to methylate, and that change will be handed down to your offspring, so that it's no wonder that America looks obese and diabetic. And to have the FDA tell people that there's nothing wrong with bisphenol A when Dr. Jirtle at Duke University, his research is so powerful, so persuasive, that we had PBS do a documentary called Ghost in Your Genes on Nova about this problem we're discussing. We're discussing then whether you have heart disease, or you're obese, or you're tired, or your thyroid's not working, or your child's not behaving, and you've got diabetes or asthma. There's some commonality. And I invented from the book The Autoimmune Epidemic a simple acronym that reminds you of 6 problems that can cause these problems that we're seeing as an epidemic. The acronym is FIGHHT. The F for fight, for food, the I for infection, the G for genetics, H for heavy metals and hormones, T for toxins. BPA is one of this long list of toxins that I'm showing you with these slides, is in every living human being anywhere on the planet today. So if we look then at these 200 chemicals in the umbilical cord, we know that these laboratories that did these tests are above reproach, and there is no one that you know that is enjoying today optimal health free of these toxins. But it's taken a while for science to move to the point that they would begin to implicate these toxins, because they're in every human being. They sit there and say, well, it must not have anything to do with diabetes or cancer, because we find it in everybody. But you'll find that there is important documentation that they are adversely affecting your body now. So the website at the bottom of this slide is called Diabesity, ultrawellness.com webinar. I was so happy 2 weeks ago when Dr. Mark Hyman had made the effort, and he presented this on a webinar a little over 2 weeks ago, and it went to 12,000 attendees. So they've decided to keep it playing permanently because they just had to go ahead and film it and play it. So Dr. Mark Hyman, who does a wonderful job on PBS and has been doing a great job on the board of directors of functional medicine, which are the doctors in the United States who have been trained with many of the ideas that Dr. Jeffrey Bland brought to the fore many years ago, and has become now a rallying call for a form of advanced medicine which we call functional medicine. You could understand the word functional in the following way. If you thought you had something wrong with your heart and you laid down on the table and they hooked you to an EKG, it was a resting test and it didn't stress your heart very much. It didn't really test the function of your heart. But when we put you on the treadmill and we have you start really pumping some fluid around and start really moving your legs, now it's a functional test. The same way with vitamin B12. If your doctor doesn't learn any of this medicine, and 99+% know nothing about what we're talking about here, but they can learn it, and because motivated patients help change the practice of medicine. That's why we call it the practice of medicine, because those of you listening, we're going to empower you with enough information that no doctor will be able to ignore you when you say, "Doctor, I want to work with you. I've been going to you for many years, but I've learned some new things." When Mark Hyman does this on PBS, they sell a kit for $360 that they feel can almost replace your family doctor with the new things you need to know. What are new things? Well, you've heard in the front page of the paper that antidepressants aren't doing much for most cases of both mild and moderate depression. In fact, it looks like a complete ripoff. I call it a ripoff because obviously the doctor was in a hurry. You gave him a symptom or two of depression, and never once did he look in your mouth to see if you might have a whole mouthful of silver amalgam, or even ask you if you are eating sushi or other fish that could give you mercury. 25% of people in New York City have elevated levels of mercury from eating sushi, and we have a book called Diagnosis Mercury by Dr. Jane Hightower from San Francisco, and her patients were always coming to her tired, fatigued, depressed, and all these other things, and she was the only one who thought, well, maybe we ought to look for a cause. And she asked them, "Do you eat a lot of fish?" And they did, and then she drew a blood test, and she measured the mercury, and she's written a book that can again move medicine in the direction of becoming real doctors again instead of drug pushers for the big pharmaceutical companies. That's what's happened. We've taken our medical schools, and we need money, so we take our best professors and we seduce them with a big check from a drug company, and after that they're no longer a professor. They are then a spokesman because they get addicted to that extra check of 50 or 100 or 200 or 500,000 so they can have a big department and a lot of employees that actually, run errands for them or do whatever. So we have to get this concept across that Mark Hyman, as a person on the board of directors of functional medicine, which has a series of training modules to teach doctors. I want those of you who are going to learn that he is busy and I don't take new patients right now. How can I empower you so we can help change American medicine and save our country from going down the tubes with useless, expensive things like bypass surgery, fluoridation of our water, vaccinations that do more harm than good. We've got the cart in front of the horse here, and we give you an anti-inflammatory like Vioxx and kill people without ever saying, "I wonder where the inflammation came from." You can't talk diabetes without talking about things like inflammation. And that leads into other areas that you will find as we go into this thing deeper. But I want to make it clear that the cheapest education is to listen to this attachment, diabesityultrawellness.com webinar, because It took a little over an hour, and you will have your hands around what caused Mark to put together a package which consists of 2 spiral-bound booklets, maybe a couple hundred, 250, 300 pages, and 2 DVDs, and give you a charge. He's going to charge you $149. It'll be the best money you've ever spent, because if you don't have some of the issues that are in this metabolic syndrome, somebody you love has. And let's just put things where it's cart in front of the horse. Statins are useless. They are a complete ripoff on the American public, because cholesterol was never the enemy. There's only one kind of cholesterol, as Dr. Hyman explains in the booklet you'll get, where you can do NMR-based testing for particle size of your cholesterol. And if the particle size is small, dense, that can stick in the arteries and be a slight contributor to the disease. But nobody has a statin deficiency. But taking statins is giving people rhabdomyolysis, breakdown of our muscles leading to elevated enzymes. But what's intriguing is that we also see a proven deficiency of coenzyme Q in people taking these statin drugs. But what I'm upset about is the complete failure of the hypothesis that cholesterol is the enemy, because half of all people who die have a cholesterol perfectly normal at 150 and they have a heart attack. So treating cholesterol has been a ripoff on our people. We can prove that a good multiple will give you as much benefit as taking a statin with no downside. And statins are causing increase of depression, increase of sexual problems, because it is a key building block in the steroids that our body uses to make key hormones that function in our body. Is sort of paint cholesterol, which is a part of the building block of every cell in your body, as a bad guy, is not being truthful to the American public. So when Mark Hyman puts the package together, which I really love, he has given you the necessary information about diets and foods that you can eat, and talked about the fact that you're never going to change it. We don't have a magic. You can't just take vanadium or chromium or niacin or magically essential fatty acids and all of a sudden you have normal blood sugar. Our problem is bigger than that, and it's going to involve the use of exercise and how to relax, and it's going to involve the problem of detoxification and getting heavy metals out of your body and managing things that are right now infections that are in virtually everybody listening to me at this time. These things include cytomegalic virus, described by Harvard Medical School about 2 months ago as being present in about 99% of all people, which they thought was just coincidence that it was in all these people. But now they found, oh, it actually helps grow in the plaque that's involved in arteriosclerosis. So it is important. So whether you talk Coxsackie or chlamydia or candida or cytomegalic virus or mycoplasma, we don't care. We have to broaden your understanding. So this is easy and comfortable, particularly for me, because I've been teaching 6 points of health, and Dr. Hyman has 7 points of wellness. So my 6 points, again, were the food, find out which food you should get off of, which food supplements you must take, the I for the infection, to figure out what are you going to do to lower your total body burden of the virus, fungus, and bacteria. Fortunately, we have a infection program with advanced cellular silver, and we have proof from the Brigham Young University under Dr. Robinson. The department doing biological testing for U.S. government has been able to test advanced cellular silver against every one of these infections we find in humans, whether it's herpes or whether we're talking Coxsackie or chlamydia or the candida, any of the fungal infections. We absolutely can prove that none of them survive this advanced form of cellular silver. So we can deal with some of these things, but when we talk about inflammation, inflammation is directly related to the dumb things we do in picking food and eating often the same food every day and never being willing to make a change. So if we try to analyze the mess that American medicine is in. A lot of it is because the MD has spent a lot of money. He's in debt for $100,000 or $200,000, and he doesn't question what he was taught, and he tends to believe that he is the final authority, whereas in fact their information is doubling every couple of years in every field. And whatever any doctor tells you that there's no other answer, there's no other treatment, they do not know enough to prognosticate it. If they tell you you have a month to live, you should fire them because they don't know what they're talking about. I have canceled bypass surgery on every patient for over 20 years. I have none of my patients dying of a heart attack. I think I know my business pretty well. I take on people with 90% blocked arteries, and it's all complete nonsense because a blocked artery on an angiogram has nothing to do with a PET scan. So why do I feel comfortable treating diabetes? I've never had anybody with diabetes lose their toes or their kidneys or their eyes. And those are the small vessels that diabetics are always going blind or winding up on renal dialysis or having their toes amputated. And of course, heart attacks. So since I haven't had my patients have a heart attack or lose toes with gangrene, and I've only practiced medicine 51 years, I think that we have some good answers. What I love is Dr. Mark Hyman has organized it in a way that since I can't take on 1 million new patients, and since there's 23 million who are diagnosed with diabetes, he has taken the time and energy to organize and explain to you what are the tests and what to look for in those tests. And everything that he's having you do are tests that I would do as an anti-aging doctor or as a cardiovascular nutritionist. So I am comfortable when he does C-reactive protein and homocysteine, and all of you will be comfortable when you have his book. And because he has a whole section in the book that says very simply, take this to your doctor, how to work with your doctor to get what you need. And this is so wonderful because the article I'm having you read at this moment is already 3 years old, but it's an article in which he started to say that in diabetes, we can't just keep treating symptoms and telling the patient you have high glucose in your blood, therefore you have diabetes. That doesn't tell you anything about that patient's genes, what's unique about that patient. Should that patient be on a vegetarian diet? Some. Should they be on a high protein? Some. This is a little bit complex, and fortunately, he has organized these things. So the article in front of you, asking the right questions, simply tells you that we're going to move beyond treating diabetes as a group of symptoms and going into treating causes. And that is where the payoff is. So the little line at the bottom lets you have an article that helps explain his thinking. But the diabetes prescription comes as a total of 2 booklets, one on the left, 6-week blueprint, and the one on the right. And most importantly, there are 2 DVDs, and the DVDs have a total of about 9 separate presentations so that those who can learn better from that method than from the booklets, because they fit together perfectly. And so with this package of $149 investment, because he had 12,000 people on his webinar a couple weeks ago, the 1,000 of these sets that he put together was gone. And he priced it so affordably at $149, and he included the first month of a wellness consultant answering by email specific questions that you may have, where you may think, well, because I am gluten intolerant, your diet won't work for me, or something, any question that you had. So he really gave you full measure for the $149. And so obviously the 1,000 sets were gone in 3-4 days. The net result is there will be a little problem of waiting. He thinks it may take a month or 2 to have these sets put up again. But my job is to interpret and make sure that while I want you to spend $149, I want to support the effort that he is putting into making medicine able to change, because with the references he has pulled together for the particular chapter where you take it to your doctor, you are in a position that your doctor is not going to be able to ignore and push you out the door and say, oh, I'm the expert on diabetes, I've never heard of any of that. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. So the diabetes prescription is going to empower anybody to give the necessary key references to this breaking news, because this is news in New England Journal. These are major papers that your doctor may not have had the time to read. So these are the references by chapter, and they are all what you get when you get this package. So if they say they've never heard about endocrine disruptors leading to obesity, endocrine disruptors, the dioxins, the PCBs, we are all loaded with these. It explains why young ladies at age 8 and 9 are sometimes fully sexually mature. It explains a lot of why some women, no matter what they do, can't stop the hot flashes. We have an epidemic on our hands of chemicals that are adversely affecting our body. And so if we look at the testing for the health professional, what is very powerful in this part of this chapter is we teach you which tests would have the most bang for the buck. And then we have advanced cases where you'll want to do even more testing. But the problem has always been, who's the expert to say what is acceptable and not acceptable for your hemoglobin A1C, or what is acceptable particle size, or what is acceptable on the ratio between your triglycerides and your high-density lipoproteins, which we need to avoid having. The HDL ratio should be high enough that if you multiply it by 4, it's still less than the triglyceride. So the triglyceride HDL ratio, when it's over 4, that means you have huge high numbers of triglycerides, which years doctors have ignored. But we know things like carnitine and omega-3 can help that. But what helps it the most is to get your diet straightened out. And straightening out the diet is a very, very vital part of all of this work. And none of it will work without you getting out of the house for 30 minutes. If you can't do it alone, buy a dog, because everybody will walk their dog, even if you won't get off the couch yourself. And provably, everybody that owns a dog will live longer because they do walk the dog. But the new research on exercise, like the PACE, P-A-C-E program by Al Sears, will show that some people can do as little as a minute and exercise, a minute, and do that 3-4 times a day, because they do maximum effort. But it's a whole new program that you haven't heard about. But I'm trying to make this more friendly so you understand that we're all in this together. When you think you're going to get rid of the dioxins and the PCBs, what's going to be the way? I can do a lot with fiber and high-dose C and zeolite. I can do a lot, and I can actually have a lot of people get rid of a lot of bad stuff with saunas and sweating. But it helps a lot if I have you on the right supplements, and everyone for optimal health today is going to need supplements. Whether you just get Essential Daily Defense, which is the active part of the Beyond Chelation Improved, the part that we spent the $10 million on in the 1960s when we wanted to stop heart attacks based on Lester Morrison's work. It's all in the capsules, Essential Daily Defense. And this is safe enough that you can open the content of a capsule and give it to a baby that is 1 month old and put it in the applesauce and start the process with the garlic and the EDTA that is in that product, EDD, of improving the health by getting rid of some of the bad things in our bodies. But as we begin to understand then, there are testing laboratories, and they are all laid out for you, and the testing to diagnose the presence of these things is, I repeat, insulin response test. We do fasting in 3-minute, 1 hour, and 2 hour, and we both measure glucose and insulin. Well, I was trained in all of this because I was a metabolic physician, and I've been an environmental physician, and I'm co-founder of ACAM, the Chelation Doctors, and I've been an active member in all forms of medicine, including holistic medicine, so I've studied these. And we've always measured the insulin as well as the glucose, and I've understood this, but your doctors in the United States are constrained to do what's usual, reasonable, and customary due to your stupid insurance companies. They have their rules, and they want to keep it really simple and get you out the door and spend as little as possible. So some of these tests, once you have what we are discussing at this moment in time, I repeat, this is a one page out of chapter 1 of the section in the booklet, Get What You Need from Your Doctor. And what we're teaching people here is that we have to teach the doctor that the nonsense about measuring total cholesterol is a waste of everybody's time. Even the old-fashioned LDL, all of that is not the thing. What we really need to understand is, yes, we'll do total cholesterol, but we would like to see that there is a possibility of diabetes when your LDL is over 70, or your HDL is under 60, or your triglycerides are over 100, or the ratio of triglycerides to HDL. So everything on this slide is really important to the picture. But then when you have the booklet, the additional tests will cover the high sensitivity C-reactive. We've got to measure some test for inflammation. There are many more tests offered by leading research laboratories that go way beyond the C-reactive protein. But just giving you the hint here that C-reactive, if it is elevated, what are you going to do about it? Well, if you're a lazy doctor, you're going to give somebody Vioxx and kill them because it's an anti-inflammatory. So they got increased inflammation, let's just knock it out. That isn't treating the cause. So for some people, the only thing we need to do to lower inflammation is to take them, get them off the foods they're sensitive to, and lower the intake of sugar, and lower the intake of high fructose corn syrup. And sometimes it's just getting the lead and the mercury out. And then there was always the problem in medicine that what we used to call inflammation, which was swelling and pain and redness and local edema. What we have to look at is there was always an element of infection. But they know that if you go to the NIH and you're a patient with heart disease, they can test you and find chlamydia in most patients' plaque after the body is dead. But they also find infection in the plaque from everything that's in your mouth. So I have everybody hold silver in their mouth for at least 1 to 2 minutes once a day to lower the likelihood that the bad stuff in your gums infiltrates through your system and winds up on the plaque in your arteries, because that is happening to virtually everybody. So there's always the infection component. When we speak inflammation, there's always an infection component, which no one treats, because if we give you really good treatment for chlamydia, azithromycin, and you stay on it, you're going to have lower C-reactive, but when you go off of it, it bounces right back up, and you don't cure the chlamydia and the other infections until I have you on a health-promoting program of exercise and the right foods and the right supplements, and you can't have that without the vitamin D. And you've got to get the lead and the mercury out of it. Everybody is born with at least 1,000 too much lead in your bones when you're born. That's in addition to all the toxins we showed you at the beginning of this presentation are the organic. So you have two kinds of toxins. The inorganic, like the lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, which the entire group that I co-founded called ACAM, the American College for Advancement in Medicine, have become very adept at treating. But we have to recognize that because the main source of some of those toxins is the lead, is the bone, like the lead in bone, you're going to be on a program for 15 years or you're not going to win that fight, because there's nothing that will suck out all the lead that's in your bones today. So you have to be every day taking something, zeolite, fiber, high-dose C, oral chelator. I take all of them because I really at age 75 want to be a lot younger at age 76, and so I see what I'm doing, and I'm willing to take all. But to save money, some people may just take an oral chelator, heavy detox, that Longevity Plus is DMSA, or they may take two different forms of zeolite. They have ACZ and they have one that is called ZeoGold. But we'll get into that. But look at this list of additional tests. Fibrinogen, we need to keep it down. LP, A, lipoprotein A, uric acid, homocysteine. If you have too much ferritin, iron overload is almost as dangerous as having mercury or lead poisoning, and it is extremely common. One reason is we have a lot of men taking a multiple that has iron, and men don't have menstrual periods most of their life, and so they continue to build up iron, and iron, when it's higher, will push ferritin high, and when it's high, you're going to have insulin resistance, which is the underlying criteria. In fact, half of high blood pressure is insulin resistance. I repeat, is that going to be helped by any silly drug? Is there going to be a beta blocker, calcium channel blocker, some drug for your blood pressure that's going to treat the insulin resistant component? Insulin resistance is what all of this is about that we're teaching you. And it's Dr. Mark Hyman's 7 Keys to Wellness or Dr. Gary Gordon's FIGHT program, which is 6 things. Either way, when you put the picture together, everything is multifactorial. So if you do everything but you refuse to exercise, you will be healthier. Just taking vitamin D, you're going to be healthier. But I got into this field as a doctor with disabling angina. At age 29, I could virtually never go up a flight of steps most of my earlier life, and now at age 75, I can ride a bike straight up a mountain because I have taken the time to learn all this. There wasn't a book out there when I helped bring together ACAM to teach doctors the science behind chelation, which is tremendous science. But it didn't happen to reverse the plaque on people's arteries, but it gave them better blood flow. And you measure blood flow with a PET scan, not with some ridiculous angiogram. They should be banned. We have a website called premierheart.com, and it has a supercomputer device reading an EKG that gives better data than angiograms, which are misleading, have a chance for danger, and put you in the hands of some really well-meaning people in hospital who tell you, oh, you're 80 to 90% blocked, you're going to have a heart attack anytime. It's all nonsense. They don't tell the truth. If you're 80% blocked in an angiogram, it doesn't mean anything because the body makes collateral circulation. So the reason I love this story about diabetes is it ties everything together for cancer and dementia and all of the diseases that we face today, because this is an underlying problem that is contributing to premature aging. So the liver function tests, because people with just food alone can poison their liver to the point they have actually hepatitis. And what kind of food are we getting today? What is the second biggest issue? It's agribusiness. They think we were all designed to live on soy, and then they genetically modify the soy, and then they think we're all designed to live on corn, and they genetically modify that. Food was much more complex. And a really excellent book called Nutrition in Your Child's Soul by D.R. Gilmore, who worked for 20 years with one of my mentors, Dr. Abraham Hoffer, has put things that I'm covering in today's lecture into a single format. And if you buy the book, Nutrition in Your Child's Soul, you'll understand who Weston Price was and why he went to primitive societies to see how healthy their mouth was, because they weren't living on the food that we have decided to make most Americans live on. The things that our agribusiness is good at raising may not be what we need. It may be that we're going to have to one day go back to World War II victory gardens and share some space with colleagues who lived close to us and raise food that we pick when it's ripe and balance the soil, because food is a key part of it. Inflammation is a part of it. Exercise is a part of it. And then you get down to the 25-hydroxyvitamin D. The epidemic you will find of people whose vitamin D levels are far too low because we've been lied to. They told us the sun is going to kill our skin. Actually, the sun decreases the amount of people getting the most serious form of skin cancers, melanoma. So the other skin cancers are all 100% curable without even seeing a doctor. You can buy from overseas, BEC-5 from international anti-aging systems, and you can actually put it on things that don't heal, or you can now just use, amazingly enough, the zeolite available from Longevity Plus called ACZ Nano, and spray it on anything that doesn't heal. Just do it 3-4 times a day for a couple of months. It'll save you money, and you won't have to bother to buy this stuff from International Anti-Aging in London. But we can prove that these skin cancers are curable. But if you realize that we've ducked away from the skin so much that we are getting rickets back in our country. So yes, vitamin D today seems to be needed by most of us at the level of 5,000 units a day. And this is just still the tip of the iceberg, because we have this problem about our hormones not working properly. And a lot of us are tired, and we're overweight, and we think thyroid would help. And you see the doctor, and he says, oh no, you're normal. This booklet will tell you levels of TSH, which need to be down in the 1 to 2 range, and levels of the TPO antibiotics. And when you get this booklet, you're going to be empowered with references to be able to argue with your doctor. Or you can buy a really good book called Type 2 Hypothyroidism by Mark Starr, who ties in the temperature very much to this and tries to have you get a device from your pharmacy so you can measure your core body temperature and try to keep it near the 98.6, which it should be, but because this is all part of things we're not doing. But the sex hormones are not working, and we need so many men to get testosterone. It's just amazing how many men need to have some topical testosterone, and it is not going to cause everybody to immediately get prostate cancer. And we have to give a safe answer to women. They know they need help, because once they go through the change, we're going to lose bones, we're going to lose brain, we're going to have depressed, the vagina gets dry. We have all these issues, but we can handle that with herbal remedy from Thailand, available only through Longevity Plus, with 10 years accumulated research papers. It will now soon become available worldwide, because one of the major pharmaceutical companies has seen the wisdom to offer something that actually lowers breast cancer, proven with very sophisticated studies. So we're talking about HRT, that stands for Herbal Remedy from Thailand. We'll show you more about this. So the thyroid dysfunction is part of this problem that we're having. And people who are needing thyroid are not getting it because the doctors are afraid. That's why I like Dr. Mark Hyman so much. He goes on PBS and he openly states that mainstream medicine is no longer your best friend. They're not keeping up with it. But then he puts the effort in to give you this packet of material that you can read and understand, and then a special packet in it to tell your doctor why we have to test blood glucose with insulin, and what the insulin response test should be, and what are the safe levels when we give you a glucose test, which is 75 grams of sugar, which is the equivalent of 2 sodas. But we have to have your doctor learn what the normal safe ranges of all these, so that if fasting insulin should be between 2 and 5, and if it goes over 10, fasting is unhealthy, and the 30-minute, 1 hour, and 2 hours should be less than 2.5, excuse me, 25 to 30. So across the board, when we give you thyroid dysfunction, we're giving you some background into how the multifactorial, so whether you call it 7 Keys to Wellness, which is the Ultra Wellness prescription, or Dr. Gordon's FIGHT, and I have put up a website called Fight for Your Health. The 4 is the number 4. And I will continue to add to that website, because the 2,000 doctors who I speak to daily in their fact forum, by sending them 3 updating emails, because knowledge in our field is expanding exponentially, and 3 is not enough. I would like to send them 30, but they have to practice. So I'm building a database for doctors called FACT, which any doctor can access free of charge. So I do it one way to try to bring doctors into the fold by saying, okay, you're a new doctor, you've never dealt with mercury overload, you've never looked in a patient's mouth and say, oh, there's 10 fillings in that mouth. You've never measured mercury, you have never read a book on mercury, the diagnosis, you wouldn't know what normal mercury in the blood or hair is. You know, how do I help these people? Well, they join, no cost, the FACT forum, and there I have doctors who are knowledgeable, and a new doctor can type in and say, I'm stuck, I have this patient. The blood pressure is way sky high, the triglycerides, I'm trying, but it's not working. We have to be able to help the doctor and help the patient. So the patient will be helped at fightforyourhealth.com. The doctors have to join GordonResearch.com and join FACT, and that way they get an email from me every day, but they get a password so they can see how I treat breast cancer and prostate cancer and what the latest facts are on autism and Alzheimer's. By the way, Alzheimer's is a myth. It doesn't exist. It's something that you need to know, but across the board, optimal levels of sex hormones. So we have all this in these few pages, so your doctor doesn't have to do all the reading you are going to be doing, but your doctor is empowered with information to know that you're serious. You would like these things. You want to know what your DHEA is. Lots of us need to be on a DHEA supplement, and lots of men have to have their free testosterone, and women need more. And across the board, we don't have to take the bioidentical hormones, which certainly there's several books. Suzanne Sommer wrote a popular one. But across the book, we now have an alternative using entirely safe phytonutrients, which herbal remedy from Thailand, HRT, is a selective estrogen receptor modulator of the beta receptor, and it will change the life of anybody who understands that my passion is to recognize that experts all agree that if you were born in this century, your chance of living to 100 is better than 50%. And if you're going to live that long, who wants to get old and have hard arteries and soft bones and be restricted in your activities? I want healthy aging. And for a lot of people, we're going to supplement progesterone. I use progesterone topically. But the HRT is Praeria mirifica, but it has to be standardized. So I already have people who, for some reason, will save a buck and buy something that has not been worked on, where I've met with the Thailand Research Council. We've done a special extraction. We call it pure estrol. It's sad when people hear about something and they think it's simple. It was not simple, because this is essentially like a gourd that grows in the ground. And if you take a little of that gourd, it can be loaded with the Praeria, and another part of it may have virtually none. And so you can get too much, too little, and you won't get the results you're needing. But as we look at the big picture then, we have to realize that a lot of people, what we have talked about here, which is extremely exciting, to be able to tell people, if you will do the tests that are in this prescription, diabetes prescription from Mark, and you will follow the necessary suggestions to improve those tests, because there will be a lot of abnormalities. And that's one of the reasons it's convenient for Longevity Plus to be enthusiastic, because we have two kinds of zeolite. One, ACZ, that anybody can start with if the baby is 1 hour old, or your dog is 2 hours old. Because your dog's 1 out of 2 are going to get cancer, so you need to look at detoxing. And zeolite was used for years on animals, and when you used it on animals, there was a marked reduction of infections, on malformations of new babies, and there was a dramatic reduction of aflatoxin toxicity, and a clear-cut better utilization of the food that you fed the animal, turning it into lean protein. So these things make me excited that we can help people. But some of us won't be able to understand the complexities of FIGHT or Dr. Hyman's 7 keys until you read his entire prescription, which may make it more friendly. But if you'll reach out and do just one thing, get a book by a cardiologist, Tom Levy, Curing the Incurable, with 1,200 references, and read it. Because if I'm sitting here talking about infections, vitamin C treated aggressively enough, which is why we have to have a special form that Longevity Plus is the only company offering Bioenergy C. It is a vitamin C delivery system, so that we can get into your cells the level that can enable you to do some of the magic things. And we consider it near magic. Because if you go to my webinar on GordonResearch.com, every week webinar is able to be reviewed at any time. So go to the one on vitamin C and cancer. We'll tell you that intravenous vitamin C does things that oral can never do. But you can never do without oral, because you need protection every day of your life, as this article is trying to teach you. So insulin resistance and endothelial, that's the lining of your arteries, dysfunction in smokers is significantly protected with taking extra vitamin C. But most vitamin C absolutely doesn't do the bang for the buck, because we have come up with a simple stick test. You wet the urine, you turn the stick bright yellow, or you don't have enough vitamin C to have optimal protection against all the toxins that are in every living American. In fact, every living human on the face of the earth today. There's no water you can get that is free. That's why the ultimate filter has been proven to be the filter called zeolite. Now, if you do RO in your home, you'll have a carbon filter, and it'll do a pretty good job of getting rid of some of the birth control pills. But the Handbook of Zeolite Science and Technology, $250 textbook, you just get it from Amazon. That book has medical applications of zeolite. It's the 24th chapter, and it's by Pavlik, and when you read that, you will be astonished what is known about zeolite, and you'll go to my website, zeoliteanswer.com, and learn why, if your doctor isn't knowledgeable about zeolite, and 99.9% will know nothing, even though we sell millions of tons of this worldwide, Americans not kept up with this development, but it's been used historically in India. But we now have a new zeolite that can do things that truly are going to save your life. It's one of the reasons that I'm getting younger each month is because I take ZeoGold. So we have the ACZ form of zeolite, which is for anybody. It's almost homeopathic. You can give it to anybody, and they start the process of pushing and getting some of the bad things out, because zeolite is volcanic rock. It is filled with little holes. It looks like a sponge if you put it under a microscope, and each little hole is a cave or a tunnel, and it has a charge, and each one is just the size of an individual atom of lead or mercury. So we've got some pretty interesting things that we can do to help people today with these toxins that we're fighting. And Bioenergy C is the vitamin C delivery system that has in it the methylation support that Randy Journal at Duke found is needed because of the epigenetic change that things like bisphenol A and phthalates. Phthalates are the plastics that we drink our bottled water out of. Every one of you has 10,000 times more phthalates in you today than you had a few years ago, and it's leading to about a 40% drop in sperm count in young men around the world, leading to the need now to hire a reproductive specialist, because just marrying somebody isn't enough to wind up having babies. You wind up needing specialists because you can't impregnate because of these problems that we're having. So this vitamin C is an answer. And the cancer patients all take enough to keep the stick, the yellow stick, vitamin C yellow. And most people will have far longer lifespan if you read the Curing the Incurable and you take at least a slightly heaping teaspoon twice a day, which would be 4 grams in each teaspoon, with the net result that we need to know that changing our diet is the biggest problem of the picture. So when Time magazine says the real cost of cheap food, they're just trying to tell you that agribusiness isn't your best friend, and ideal diets are going to be organic. We can prove with organic foods that I can drop many of these inflammatory markers. So we don't like genetically modified corn, and it's in everybody today. We know that when they introduced genetically modified soy, that all of a sudden we had huge increase in allergies in the population. We know that we have leaky gut, so everybody is going to have to be on acidophilus, and Mark Hyman's book explains how important the gut is, and if you're not getting well, you're going to need another test. You might even still have a parasite, but I use the silver to lower the level of bad guys in your gut so that the good guys can grow, and then I put you on Beyond Fiber, because Beyond Fiber is a critical step to supporting whatever acidophilus you buy at the store, whether it's DDS or Chiodophilus or whichever. We all are stuck. We have to take some acidophilus daily because we're getting pesticides and insecticides in our food that make our intestine not effectively converting our food from inactive to active nutrients. So the gut has a biofilm. Here's a self-check to see if you have candida. If you're a diabetic, candida is presumed that you have it, but no one cures it because they don't help you cure your diabetes. Because when you're sweet, it feeds fungi and yeast, so I have to make you less sweet. So I don't just treat high levels of blood glucose by giving you a shot of insulin or a drug. I try to have you understand how you can get the road back to health. So a virus, this new one called, the new one is called XMRV. It's brand new. You haven't heard about it. 67% of people with chronic fatigue have this virus. So understand why. And without trying, at least an ounce of silver the first day and a half an ounce of silver for several weeks, you'll never know what you could have done unless you have a doctor that can give you ozone or ultraviolet blood or 50 or 100 gram vitamin C. You can't lower the levels of these viruses. That we even have a virus that we believe is causing obesity, University of Wisconsin. So inflammation, we've given you a hint here today that it ties to eating too much sugar, too much of the wrong foods, eating foods you're allergic to. He asks you to go 90 days off of all dairy and off of all wheat. That's the cheapest way, or you can do a test to measure some of these things, sagelab.com or other tests. But silver is going to help you lower these viral, fungal, and bacterial, all of them. And you can safely take it, and you will not turn the argyria color. The safety is documented, and they now have approved it by EPA that it'll even kill anthrax spores by putting it into a special form to put on surfaces. So because of this product, ACS, because of the people behind it, they'll never have to close the nation's capital again because of fear about anthrax spore, because any pathogen that you could have in your body will not live around ACS. And here's the kinetics to prove that ACS is that powerful, whether it's Staph aureus, strep. There isn't anything that's in your body that's unhealthy, but it makes your body grow healthier. And here's the competition. Other products take 60 minutes or 24 hours to get the same kill that you get in 2 minutes. 2 minutes I like, because you'll hold it in your mouth 2 minutes, and that way your mouth will not be poisoning your body with the things that are in your mouth. So the silver is key. The Beyond Fiber carries the toxins out. It has octocosanolan, gamma, oryzanolan, beta-cytosterol, high levels of the B vitamins and inositol. Beyond Fiber is part of my detox program, which is BCI. Take Beyond Chelation, then get on the 4 things I call my power drink: the green, the maca, the fiber, and the vitamin C. And then you're really doing some detoxing. And then add, at first, the ACZ, and use that homeopathic, gentle version, which I said spray it on your skin and things heal, but take it orally, work up to 10 sprays 4 times a day, and then start on Zeo Gold. Take 1 a day, but now some people are pushing the envelope like and I'm taking 5 a day because I want to be able to go up mountains that I couldn't do when I was a kid. So Zeo Gold is changing my life. In my fight program, we'll be discussing next week as we get into this in more depth. And it's been a great opportunity to introduce you today to the wonderful fact that we can all live a lot longer. And today, Stanford University presented the studies that we can take skin cells in mice and make 3 simple genetic changes, and they become an actual working neuron. So the future of stem cell is all here. These interviews with Benny Hinn are on my website. We hope you go to Gordon Research and learn how to navigate. There's 10,000 pages there, but you've got to say where it says find answer. You've got to put in the word mercury or autism or breast cancer. You've got to put a word in. Don't leave it blank or you won't find any of the 10,000 pages. I welcome you then to learn to fight for my health. The Zeolite Answer website. The Fight for Your Health has a special blog site where Linda Hemming, who's recovering from multiple sclerosis, Lyme, and cancer, tells you how she has used the products at Longevity Plus to change her health. Thank you for your attention. This is Dr. Gary Gordon.